So next, it's a real pleasure to welcome colleagues I haven't met personally except through email. From the School of Social Sciences at Western Sydney Uni, we have a joint presentation by Jenna, Condie and Garth, which will go for the next 10 minutes. Thanks, both of you.
Hi, everybody. So, Garth, where shall we start? In 2015?
Yeah, in 2015. So the usual way we introduce ourselves is in 2015, Jenna knocked on my office door and asked, would I be interested in researching Tinder and tourists on Tinder? To which I told her to get out of my office. And then 5 years of persistence from Jenna, and we're still working together. I guess we've worked together under a couple of titles, so under Travel in the Digital Age and now under the Social Technologies team, and we're still back and forth between those two identities. In those 5 years, we've worked with about 30 odd, mostly postgraduate students, but also undergraduate research students and other academics around all manner of digital projects. I guess we're a philosophy that research and teaching and learning can't be separated. So in the spirit of that philosophy of our teams, and knowing that we wanted to talk about digital research today, we went out to our team and we asked them for their tips that they would like to share with people contemplating, either if they've been within that space already or never been in that space, their tips for engaging with digital research. So that is what we'll be sharing today. So I think we can go on to the next slide, Jenna.
Yeah, we've pulled our collective knowledge. Initially, we were going to go for 10 tips, but we don't have 10 tips of time. And yesterday we were on 4, but what we've done is had a conversation with our crew, and we've come together and got sort of overarching themes. We were going to share a link to the slides as well. So there's, potentially endless number of tips that we could come up with. So we thought we might try something interactive for the discussion and see if anybody, what we talk about sparks ideas for other people to input their own thoughts around doing digital research. And we have a copy of the slides, so if somebody accidentally deletes them, we've got a backup.
Could you share that, Jenna, or shall I share it now?
Oh yeah, can you pop it in the chat? Yeah.
So you're welcome to enter. Please don't touch slide 2.
Yeah, I'll talk about tip 1, which kind of brings together our collective interests in using feminist new materialism to do our digital research. And I guess that comes from some learnings of getting in a conceptual pickle when you talk about the digital world and you sort of place the binary between the digital world and the real world or the material world. We tend to talk about being online and offline. We like the binaries. So we often start through our learnings and with people that we're working with our students about resisting all the binaries that we organise life with, and acknowledging where you are placing the boundaries between worlds, because you will end up in a conceptual pickle. And this was something that Felicity Pickin, one of our colleagues, was saying, resist the urge to rarefy the digital world as separate from some other world. So it's all together, interacting and becoming together. And what we found is that really helps to set the frame for our research. It kind of links in with number 2, and this is something that we've been doing more of. Initially we were coming to digital research with our social science agendas and traditional research methods of surveys and interviews, the usual suspects, and then sort of really branching out and starting to look at the technology, the architecture of the sites, the algorithms underpinning it, just to pull everything in together and acknowledge the complexity of the phenomenon that we're looking at. And the context within which that's happening. So we've been doing some work analysing apps at the user interface, but also thinking about what's happening at the back end. Where has this app come from? Who's making it? Who keeps it going? All that kind of thing. So just pulling everything together into the research assemblage when we're looking at the digital. So it's more complicated than what it first seems. That's what we're generally finding when doing digital research. Garth, do you want to do number 3?
Yeah, so as the geographer, I'm often pointing out to our students that they're forgetting location. So for example, for the app-based research, often they're treating the app as one-size-fits-all global phenomenon. Rather than looking at apps often have an algorithm behind them, and part of that algorithm is fed in for a location, but that app is an interaction of the people who are within that space and environment. So one of the studies that we did, well, we've done a lot of work around Tinder and the use of the Tinder platform and dating practices, and some research, particularly in the space of Sydney, and how the use of that app changes with people's mobility through space and different suburbs of Sydney. So where they will swipe and where they won't swipe. So continually recognising the location of digital tech, but also the power that relationships that creates, and who isn't in those spaces that may be within those locations, what inequalities exist in the spaces. That links also to some of our advice around embracing methodological innovation. So some of the ways in which we try to get to that location, data is not even digital methods, but using applied methods around like mapping practices and getting people to map their practices or digital behaviours. So we always encourage our students to embrace methodological innovation, but we're always reminding them that they shouldn't be choosing digital research methods purely for the sake that they're innovative, that the methods that they choose need to match the research questions that they're answering. In an environment now where a lot of our research is being forced or needs to go digital, it's sort of a reverse project. These are the methods that are available to us. How do we pose questions that are suitable for the methods that we're using? Also fitting in here is organising data and being organised. So a lot of our students jump onto platforms, they start looking through things, but they don't realise that they've already started to collect data. So having systematic approaches and recording everything that they are doing in those spaces. And finally, Jenna, I think we come to care.
Yeah, I was just going to say with the organising data practices as well, because often you might have like conversations going on, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or email, and that can be pulled in as research data as well, where you've captured screenshots and you can't find stuff again. Yeah, and the fifth tip that we've got is around care, and we're trying to engage with an ethics of care and responsibility in our research, so you can end up in all sorts of places online, and we encourage that through methodological innovation. But yeah, just being caring for yourself and others in the community, thinking about what information you're presenting about yourself. Are you outing yourself as a researcher in a digital space? And then, you know, what are the implications of the research for the communities that you're coming across and the people that you're engaging with as part of the research process? And that relates to really thinking about what constitutes public data. Just because you can access it doesn't mean you should research it. So really thinking about where privacy is going, and it's, you know, the concept of privacy is shifting. Thinking about safety and cyber safety issues, and also digital rights as well of you know, we've largely been dispossessed of our data and the platforms own it, and what does that mean for our research and how do we interact with those terms and conditions. And number 6 is a list of words that we were playing with, so we've left them in around what potential verbs we can use for further tips.
Okay, I think that's probably leads us into a discussion, and I think our idea for discussion too was to go out to the people assembled who are all researchers around what their tips would be for digital research, catalyst for sharing.
Yeah.
And you've got the link where you can add them in textual form.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Garth and Jenna, for that. A lot of kind of provocations in there. I'd like to invite actually a couple of people from the audience, if they're happy to elaborate their chat kind of statements. Helena, did you want to say something more about your question there?
No, sorry. I was just, you know, as I say, I'm a social anthropologist, and I work on binaries a lot, because I believe that when it comes to researching and understanding humanity and human beings, we work very much on the on and off. Everything we do, as in categorizing the way we think and so on. When we are researching people and understanding people, we are dark and light. So that's just, saying, I find the problem, because binaries are also very difficult, because they also do black and white, which tends to be draws to racist things and so on. So I just want to say, just want to question the problem with binaries, because when we're doing some kind of online research and so on, we need to keep those things in mind. That's just my point. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll respond to that, shall I? Or Ned, you're on mute.
Rob had a complementary question. I wonder if we might bring them both together and see how they work for you to respond to.
It was just a reaction to what Elena said. What do you replace it with? Do you replace it with a multiplicity of categories, or are you replacing it with a continuum, or whatever else would be a replacement for a binary distinction? I was wondering whether you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when we're sort of looking at the binaries, it is really hard to not use them. And so it's a lot of the time we're sort of talking about where are we placing the sort of the Baradian sort of agential cut between the online and the offline world when we talk about it. So I'm not really sure there's an ideal solution to this. Continuums, categorizations, or really thinking about things as interacting and becoming together at the same time. So that's what sort of pushed us into looking at the new materialist work. Really thinking about what can it do to help us think about the place of the digital in people's lives.
Yeah, I think Sky just read my mind too. Sky's said acknowledge the binaries, and I think that's why we come at our students quite strong around resisting the binaries, because we want to jolt them out of that idea that those two things exist in isolation. But the digital tech is so interwoven with our daily lives now, and the phenomenon that we're researching. But I think acknowledge if we're finding a middle ground.
I mean, it's interesting how much the question of binary is being provocative here. Do we have a question that shifts the discussion beyond the binary problem, perhaps? Well, okay, that was a real conversation killer. So maybe
Ned, I can see some people are adding tips actually on slide 6.
Let's just stop the share because it's not updating.
So tip 6, using user-centered design techniques to deep dive into the needs of specific end users and resist assumptions, keeping all elements in the assemblage in focus. And tip 7, UX, CX, LX help us understand the place of the digital in real life, for example, as a potential to afford a real-world takeaway from a digital or it's in progress.
That's good. We're up to 7 tips.
Yeah, Rob's got a hand wavering a bit there.
I was just wondering about the data organization issues. As we have new data, perhaps because we've got screenshots and stuff, is it sort of does it also necessitate new methodologies in terms of how we actually archive and store and manage the data? Is that sort of something that will evolve and that we'll see changing, and in what potential ways? I was wondering.
A short answer, yes.
Yeah.
And
you can end up with so much. I think that's what generally tends to happen, and it's all can be in different formats. So visuals, videos, screenshots, text, just
comments in Facebook groups.
We've used a variety of different tools to try and keep hold of it and see it. Sometimes it's hard to see when you've got all these different disparate forms of data, and bring it together. And sometimes, like in supervising, say, a master's research project, we've sort of tried to control that a bit, because it can just be too much, and then you've got to bring all these different data sets together. But yeah, there's a lot to be done in the space around managing data well.
We've got time, I think, for one more quick question and response. Kate Richards, did you have a question there? I've got something in the chat suggesting you might.
Oh, no, thanks, Ned. I was just adding a few things to the slides.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, very, very interesting, I think. Yeah, there's a lot of adaptability required, I think, but I do find that those user-centred design and user experience, customer experience, as Roger said, we've got a lot to learn from marketing in some of this area, and that I think it enables us to have a variety of categories of kind of experience, because correct, it's not a binary, but we do need to be able to frame and identify and then explore in depth the particular way the data might be used or collected or displayed or understood. And we can use those user-centred design tools to make that more effective.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking as well, yesterday we spent the day, Garth mainly, messing about with a flyer for research participation, but just making sure it's, there's so much information people are sifting through, and how do you get people to participate? And marketing and advertising has got a lot to offer in that respect.
And we can add to that participation design, which was also a Northern European methodology for helping to get people to participate, letting them know they were participating and encouraging them to continue to participate.